The love for boxing really started to kick off right as I was competing at the age of 9 years old. Just that feeling of being champion, it just stuck with me, and it made me want to do my best. Boom, boom, boom. This is my life. This is my blood.
Keith Thurman, unified welterweight world champion. From the roar of the crowd to the silence of introspection, Keith's journey isn't just about knockouts. It's about navigating the inner arena, where pain meets purpose, where stillness meets strength, and where the measure of a man isn't just his title, but what does he do when the lights go out.
I can't believe after all these years, after all this research, here I am going to meet a real guru. I think working with The Art of Living kept me in a good place that allowed me to bounce back and come strong with my comeback fight that we just did in Australia.
The more you know, the more the unknown grows. I am Jitesh Vaswani, your host, and together, let's take this journey beyond the known. Keith Thurman, welcome to Beyond the Known.
Hey, what's up, my man? It's a pleasure. Thank you for bringing me onto your show.
So we met in July of 2023, or was it 2022?
2023.
2023, and
No, you were 2020. It was 3 years ago, 2022.
2022. Mm-hmm. You were up in the mountains in Boone, North Carolina, right? But we're gonna go there at a later stage. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's start from your childhood. So did you always know that you were meant for fighting, or did somebody spot that in you? Did somebody identify that talent in you? How did that come into being?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I don't think I was really talented as a fighter early on. My story is one of those stories of determination. For me, it's a blessing how boxing came into my life. I was 7 years old at the time, and before I was 7, what really had me interested in any form of fighting was actually martial arts.
Interesting.
I was raised by my mother in a single-parent household because my parents split roughly by the age of 2 to 3 years old. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a lot of memories of my father. I just remember old videos of him being there early. He always stayed in the same county as me growing up. So I would visit my father from time to time. And as early as 4 years old, I remember doing sleepovers with my dad. And you might remember in the early 90s, martial arts and kung fu movies was a thing, right?
Yeah, Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee. There was American Steven Seagal,
yes.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I just grew up with these classics like Bloodsport and Steven Seagal movies. And just my father was a big Steven Seagal fan, which happened to be Aikido and all this different martial arts. And at an early age of 4 years old, my father was participating in martial arts. So he would go to the dojo, he would learn some katas, some movements, some striking, and eventually he taught me a routine for what white belts do. And I was very young, so I would practice it with them from time to time, but I never told my mother to take me to the dojo. Several years go by, I'm just a kid, and I participated in an after-school YMCA program because my mother, she worked a typical 9 to 5. After school was over, I still had to stay for the after-school YMCA program. Eventually, out of the blue, there was a boxing exhibition that was held to be an addition to the after-school program. What happened was the head janitor of the elementary school, his name was Ben Getty. He had a real good relationship with the principal, and she trusted him and gave him permission to see how many kids would want to sign up to this after-school boxing program. And luckily for my mother and I, because the parents already paid fees to have the daycare after school, all the kids that signed up, there was no additional fees. So Mr. Getty threw on a boxing exhibition. I'm a 7-year-old boy. I see these guys throwing punches, moving their head, coming back with speed and power. And I said, that looks like karate without kicking. sign me up. And I was just very fortunate. I took the paperwork home, and it's a moment in my life I'll never forget. As soon as the door opened to get back into my apartment where me and my mother were living at the time, I take 1, 2, 3 steps in the door. I swing the backpack off my shoulder, put it on the floor, unzip the backpack, reach inside, grab the paperwork. I turn around and I say, Mom, I want to box. And boxing's been in my life ever since. It's a blessing.
Was there something internal that was happening? So 7-year-old is very young. It's like almost part of your destiny. When you start something that young, I feel like it's meant to be. It's meant to happen. And you found your passion so early in your life, which is a divine intervention per se, or a moment of great luck. So was there any internal reflection that you were also doing when you stumbled across boxing, or when you did that, you were like, hey, I belong here? Like, what was happening inside the mind of that small child?
Well, 2 things. Firstly, like I told you about spending time with my father and all that martial arts background, I never got an opportunity to tell my mom, like, oh, sign me up for karate, put me here. I found a dojo. I really want to go to this dojo. I knew what dojos were because my father participated in a dojo. And so I just felt like the seeds were being planted through my father and through the Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Steven Seagal films, that when I saw this exhibition, it's like you said, it felt like destiny. Here, a martial arts is coming to me and it's falling directly in my lap. Little did I know the comparison of what boxing is like and what a martial arts form is like. But this was something that I didn't have to search for it. It founded me. And I remember there were a few things that Ben Getty did on display. It was hosted in the cafeteria of the elementary. All the kids gathered around that were staying after school for the YMCA program, and we all watched in this exhibition display. He brought one of his fighters, was a 6th grade middle school kid, and he got on stage and he asked anybody, would you like to get up and box this guy right here, right now? And he's a young kid. He was a 5th grader, but he happened to be the biggest 5th grader we had in the school. And he raised his hand, and without parental consent, he went up there and fought. This is, what happened in the 80s and 90s. It don't happen, for liability purposes. These things won't ever happen again in the 2000s, right? But it was beautiful. And what was beautiful about it was you saw a really big kid. Even though he was a 5th grader, he had size advantage over the 6th grader. And the 6th grader obviously was being trained by the coach. So he was able to do better than the big kid. And you got to see that size is not going to outdo technique, hard work, and dedication. So I got to see that up front. And then the next thing that he did was he called Johnny up to the stage. Johnny was a little kid in my class who, ironically, in the story, happened to be the smallest kid of our elementary school. So we all called him Little Johnny, right? So Little Johnny goes up on stage, and I'm watching him. He puts the gloves on, and the coach isn't making him fight nobody. He's just hitting the mitts. Coach is just catching. Pop, 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 pop. Slip, slip. Johnny's rolling, coming up. Boom, 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 boom. And I promise you, out of all the things we knew about Johnny, nobody in the school knew that Little Johnny had hands like that, right? He had fast hand speed, good technique. And that's all I needed to see. I told myself, if he can teach Johnny how to box, he can teach me how to box. And it's really that connection that I have with that coach, Ben Getty, from my elementary school. The after-school program that he put on, it only lasted for that school year. When the summer hit, we all met up at a local playground, a local park, and we started training outdoors together throughout the whole summer. And then, before the next school year, the outdoor park was right next to a rec center. And the city of Clearwater recognized what this man was doing with the youth. And before the next school year, we got to create Clearwater boxing team. And instead of participating in the sport with the after school program the following year, I would leave the school campus, go to the rec center, and then I would train at the rec center every day henceforth. So a lot of people say, how are you boxing so young? How did, your parents let you do this? And I just tell them, man, I was saving my mom money. Okay. I got out of the after school YMCA program that she was paying for. I went to a boxing program, and when it was with the rec center, it was $5 a month. If your mother can't afford $5 a month, your neighbor can. And if your neighbor's not going to help you, then you can go to the pastor, and you're going to get $5 from the church if the child is trying to do something positive with their time. Like you said, it almost was like a destiny for me. There's another reason why I love boxing. I know how it kept me focused at a young age. It gave me something to strive for as I competed in amateur events, state tournaments, regional tournaments, eventually national tournaments. And I never got to win a nationals until I broke the age of, I believe, 13, 14, where I slowly started to go above the state and regional. And I was coming home with victories on the national level. Yeah, by the time I was 18 years old, I was a 7-time national champion before turning pro at 19 years old in the sport of boxing.
That's inspiring, man. And your story kind of highlights the importance and value of a good coach, right? Because nobody expected little Johnny to fight like that, right? But the coach made little Johnny who he was at the time. The techniques, the discipline. Of course, it takes a lot of discipline and hard work from the mentee, but the mentor per se knows how to take this journey, right? How to make a lion. You know what I'm saying?
Ben was amazing.
Yeah.
I saw him take so many kids from my neighborhood, from the streets, and turn them into state champions.
Wow.
Not everybody was going to be national champion, but we had many state champions. And I remember when I tell people about who Ben Getty was to me, he raised me from the age of 7 to the age of 20 when he passed away. And so that 13 years that he dedicated, to me on my behalf of making me a world champion. I was a pro when he passed away, but I wasn't known. Nobody knew the name Keith Thurman yet. I think I was about 10-0, 11-0 with 11 knockouts, and nobody knew my name. And I just remember, when I was at his funeral, a lot of people expected me to speak that day, and I wasn't sure if I was going to say any words. When you're there, when you're in that setting, open casket, there was nothing to say. In my heart of hearts, I had nothing to say. I love the man. He did so much on my behalf, took me everywhere. He was always proud of me. But I just remember the sensation. And the reason why I stayed quiet on that day is because this little voice spoke to me. It said that there is nothing to say. There's just a lot of work to do. And that I saw it from that day on, that I was just going to prove my coach right, because he told everybody, my mother, my father, and everybody in the Tampa Bay area, that I would be champion of the world one day. And I just made a promise to myself that I was going to make sure that Ben Getty never told a lie. So he passed away when I was 20, and at about 24, 25, I won my first world title.
There's something poetic about honoring, that relationship that exists between a coach and a student. And I think, and I'm sure, he's proud of you right now. You definitely did honor his promise. You were world champion, like you said. Is there anything that you would like to say to him if you were here today?
Oh, man. I mean, when we used to do a lot of build-ups for fights, I remember when I was 16 years old, I started knocking, I started having a real powerful left hook at the age of 14. So 14, 15, 16, I'm just dropping guys like on call. Like they put him in the ring, boom, next guy, boom. And that's what he said, this kid is phenomenal. He's got that power, he's got the it factor. And I remember he always told me, wait till they see you, boy. Wait till they see you. And the they he was talking about was the major networks in boxing. When you get sports here in America, ESPN, HBO, Showtime. But now we have Amazon Prime, right? So the world is shifting. But at that time, he was always making a reference to the premier network television, which was HBO and Showtime at the time. He said, wait till they see you, boy. And I just remember my first fight on HBO. And here I am. There's a main event, a co-main event, and a co-feature. And that's where I get in, right there, for my first fight. He knew the excitement that knockouts bring to a sport like boxing. There are so many different styles. Not every champion looks the same, right? It's not like archery where everyone's using the same technique to hit the target, right? So he knew that my style of getting people out of there was going to be exciting. And I just remember being in the room with one of my first HBO interviews where we have Max Kellerman, a few other major players in the room, and I could just hear my coach's voice. What did I tell you, boy? What did I tell you? He was one of those I told you so kind of coaches. He wouldn't hold back. If he told you ahead of time and then it comes to be true, he'll tell you right from day one, what did I tell you, or I told you so. And I just know he would have looked at my mom and dad when I became champion, and he would have said, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? You know, your boy is special. You know, going back to having a powerful mentor, you know, it really was his belief in me that even allowed me to commit to boxing, you know, because as you're growing up, how do you see yourself at the highest level? You know, 14, 15, 16 years old. It's nice to imagine. It's nice to have faith and believe, but he was an old man, so they look at time differently. He always said, it's right around the corner. And I said, Coach, the bus stop is right around the corner. I still don't got no money in my pocket, you know? And now that I'm older and I have my own children, and as time seems to speed up in life, I kind of understand what he meant by it's all right around the corner. So when somebody believes in you, it allows you to do your best. And I'm so grateful for his belief, his dedication, and because he committed, I committed. And that's why that first HBO fight, no matter where I was, first fight, second fight, third fight of the night, from that day on, I've always put his name on my trunks. If you go back and watch any Keith Thurman fight, just watch some highlights. If it was one of the major fights from my first fight on, from HBO to Showtime, NBC, Fox Network, all of those fights, I put Ben Getty's name on my trunks because his dedication to teaching me the sport of boxing is something that I feel indebted to for the rest of my life.
And I think a sport like this, I think it reveals the true character of a person. And as I'm talking to you, Keith, I'm getting goosebumps. And I know how much you love and honor your coach just from the stories that you're describing me. What story is going inside of you is probably 10x much more powerful, because words can only come so close, right? The feelings and the emotions go much beyond. And there's something about being in the ring, right? Because I think being in the ring can reveal so much about the person. What was it for you? Like when you are in the ring, what did that reveal about yourself that nothing else could?
For me, you know, when I finally got into some tough fights, you know, I just remember all the crazy training my coach used to make me do, especially at an early age. I mean, he was a Vietnam War veteran. He was very militant. He was very disciplined. But here I was, a 9-year-old boy running 8 miles once a week. And that was just the beginning of making a champion in his mindset. As time went on, he could always send us out for a long run. But eventually there was a time where he would make me wear a weight vest. You know, you see those really nice weight vests that like they get chopped up off here. The guy's wearing 25 pounds. He's working out. Those are modern day weight vests. They're very nice. Okay. Right. I had this thing that almost went down to my knees. Okay. It was stuffed with weights in the front and in the back, and it weighed 45 pounds. And so coach would be like, I want you to go run 2 miles. Yes, sir. Go run the 2 miles, come back, take it off. All right, do your exercises, jump rope, pull-ups, push-ups, dips, standard stuff after a run. No problem. A week or two goes by. That's not good enough. Coach says, go run with the weight vest. I run. I come back in. He says, don't take it off. I want you to jump rope with the weight vest. So I'm telling you, this thing was down here. It was flopping. So we had to take duct tape and like strap it all around just to try to pin this thing down while I'm trying to skip rope. So now I'm running and I'm skipping rope. Another week goes by. Coach says, don't take the weight vest off. I want you to get in the ring and I want you to do mitts with the weight vest on. So now I have to run, jump rope, and do mitt work with this 45-pound weight vest on. He just would push you and push you. I mean, and the Florida heat sometimes would almost break me, you know? Make me want to quit, make me want to throw the weight vest off, make me want to say no to coach. But the thing about, he had me grained so much from a young age, all I knew how to say was, sir, yes, sir, you know? And I knew it was for my benefit, but it you know, there were just days where it did suck. And there were a few days, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was broken a few times, where we would argue back and forth. I'm not doing this. And I was a teenager and I'd start fighting back, and then we'd make up and I'd have a good day the next day. And, you know, you can't stay mad at coach for too long, and coach can't stay mad at you for too long. But it was very challenging. Finally, there was a day where he said, you know what you're going to do today, boy? So what are we doing today, coach? He says, you're going to spar. And you're going to keep the weight vest on, you know. So now I'm moving slow. I'm fighting people. I got the weight vest on. The only thing was they can't hit me to the body, right? I'm protected. Right. They're not going to want to punch, you know, some little blocks over here, you know. So there was one pro. I didn't have to take body shots when wearing the weight vest. But I was weighted down. And he just constantly challenged me, constantly pushed me. And as you continue to rise up in the ranks, and I fight better fighters and from all over the world, Argentina and some Czech Republic, ex-world champions. Champions are coming from all over the world, all different fight styles. And there was just never a day where I didn't feel prepared. And one of the only reasons was because of the grueling techniques that my coach did. You know, they say pressure makes diamonds, right? So either you can handle the pressure or you break under pressure. But I know it's that tough love that my coach gave me that allowed me to be the fighter that I am today.
And, you know, like as a teenager, were you also, like, for example, I know a lot of fighters, you could fight for a variety of reasons. You could be fighting because you want to run away from something happening in your family, right? Or people could be fighting because they love something. So either it could be chasing fame or chasing whatever. Now, for you, what was that? Like, was it fame? Was it love? Was it leaving a legacy behind? Was it a sense of purpose? Was it just coming from a space of, you know, I have so much energy built up inside of me that I want to just be, you know, somebody up? Like, where was it coming from? You know, this inspiration or this drive to fight?
Well, you know, the love for boxing, you know, really started to kick off right as I was competing at the age of 9 years old. And then I believe the next year at 10 years old, I got to compete and win my first state championships. And just going home, knowing that you are now the state champion, you know, that made me, it was rewarding, right? You know, they say one reason why we keep scrolling and people get the likes and they look at all the followers, right? There's like this reward system that goes off in the brain. And that's why we, you know, so back then there wasn't technology. So you had to get rewarded in different ways, you know, a chocolate bar or something, you know, kids go to different things. And just that feeling of being champion, it just stuck with me. And it made me want to do my best. You know, boxing is one of those sports that when you go to the tournament and when they pull the names out of the hat, that's going to create the brackets. So you never know what you're going to get. So the only thing that you can do every time I went to a tournament, the only thing that I could do is prepare myself on my end, just on my side of things, train hard, box smart. That's the only thing that I could do. You win some, you lose some. I didn't win them all, but I won the majority. And once I was a teenager, I got on a hot streak. I won my first national tournament. I won my second national tournament. Then I won my third national tournament. And then at that time, I'm about maybe about 15 years old, about to be 16. And I could see slowly the thought came to my head, you might do this as a profession. You might be a boxer and make your whole career based around boxing. I think it dawned on me about 15 years old. And then at 16 years old, I made the commitment. I was behind credits in high school. I wasn't participating, didn't have the right encouragement to make up. And my head was in the gym. I said, that's where I want to be. And I put all my eggs in one basket. You know, I think as an American, you always hear that American dream. You can do what you want to do. This is America, freedom, home of the free. I said, man, I want to be at the boxing gym. And so at 16 years old, on my birthday, I turned my books in and I dropped out of high school. Now, it was up for debate. A lot of people weren't sure if I was making the right decision. But I tell people I left one education to get another education, because at 16 years old, I was now going to the gym at 11 or 12 o'clock. And that's when the professionals in my gym were training. And luckily for me, we moved from my hometown of Clearwater to St. Pete Boxing Club. And when we were with St. Pete Boxing Club, that gym had 2 world champions at the time, Jeff Left Hook Lacey and Ronald Winky Wright. So it's almost like being on Wall Street with the top traders, you know, the best, the big boys, you know? And there was something about just being in that environment. I'm always grateful to Winky Wright and Jeff Lacey. And I say that they taught me so much, but these men never sat me down and taught me anything personally. It was the environment of seeing how those champions trained at the highlights and at the primes of their career. It planted the seeds on the work that I was going to have to do if I wanted to be a champion at their level. And when I look back at it, it's hard to say that I would do anything different, because it was just so fortunate to come into boxing the way that I did, to end up joining that gym at the age of 14, 15, and then at 16 years old, committing to being there in the morning where the professionals were training. And I just learned so much, you know, learning on the job, as they say.
Hey, a quick pause. If you're listening to this and thinking, I need more peace in my day, more clarity in my mind, then I'll really encourage you to check out The Art of Living. The Art of Living offers a technique called Sky Breath Meditation, used by CEOs, pro athletes, and high performers around the world to recharge their energy, clear that mental fog, and reset the nervous system in minutes. They offer programs both online and in person. It is science-backed and it works. Head to artofliving.org to learn more. Yeah, no, you know, they say you are sum total of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So if you're surrounded by greatness, you will become great, right? Or you will at least sharpen yourself and you're on your path, on your journey towards that as well. You mentioned on your journey that there were wins and there were some losses, right? And anybody and everybody can celebrate the wins, right? But how did you deal with the losses? What was your most significant loss that you think in your career, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, you know, as an amateur, it's a little bit easier to take the losses. For one, you're competing a lot more often. And as an amateur, you're still developing your skills, you know? When I was 17 years old is when you finally get to a level where you can now start to qualify. If the Olympic Games is coming, you can actually compete in the Olympic trials and try to get to that Olympic status. The Olympic status is the highest pedigree of amateur boxing. Always has been, you know. When we say names like Oscar De La Hoya as a professional had the nickname the Golden Boy, and that came from him winning a gold medal at the Olympic game. So being a world champion is the highest level of professional pedigree, but getting an Olympic medal is the highest level of the amateur pedigree. So my first dream, what I was striving for, was actually to be an Olympian. And that's why I was constantly competing at the highest level in the amateurs, prepping to win one of these national tournaments that would get me onto the USA Olympic team. So in 2007, right before the 2008 China Games, I competed and I qualified for the USA Olympic trials. Before you get on the Olympic team, they host the Olympic trials in track, field, all different sports. So for boxing, we have our own Olympic trials event. First, you have to qualify. Luckily for me, I won the first qualifier that year. Boom, I'm guaranteed. I'm guaranteed that I'm going to be at the Olympic trials. So for the rest of the year, all I was prepping for was really getting ready for the Olympic trials. I did compete in one more event, might have placed fourth at the time in Colorado Springs. And then after that, no more events were coming up besides the big event, which was the Olympic trials. And the Olympic trials is a very special tournament for the amateurs. It's the only double elimination tournament that we host in boxing. And the reason why it's a double elimination is because the USA Olympic team just wants to make sure that they have the best fighter to represent America. So to really fiddle all that down, they make it a double elimination. Me and my longtime rival, Demetrius Andrade, it came down to us once again for the Olympic trials. We fought in the winner's bracket. He won, and that sent me to the loser's bracket. I had one more fight to do in the loser's bracket, and then I had my rematch against him. And if I would have beat him, he would have got his first loss, and then we would have had to do a third fight. But unfortunately, though it was a good close competition, he beat me on points, and that had to be probably the most disappointing loss of my career. I definitely lost to a very talented fighter, very talented athlete, and he did a great job in the Olympics. He almost got to the medaling rounds. He lost one day before, but that just hurt in a certain way because my whole youth was about getting to that Olympic Games. And it's okay to fail, but what bothers me and my personality is when you're so close, but you miss out. You know? If you lose the tournament day one, you weren't close. What are you going to do? You know? Just go home and make some decisions and see what you're going to do with your life. And I just remember when I left Texas that year, the Olympic trials were held in Houston, Texas. And I just remember when I left that day, I'm walking down the stairs. I have a silver medal from the Olympic trials around my neck. And I say to myself, I'm never fighting these talented fighters for less than 100,000 ever again. Okay. Mm-hmm. These are some of the best fighters in the world. I'm not fighting these guys for free ever again. Because we fought for medals and trophies and status just to build your resume as an amateur. And so I was about to turn 19 years old. And just a few days before my 19th birthday, I had my first professional fight here in Tampa Bay, Florida. And I was able to get a first round knockout, get my paycheck, and go home, you know. Nice. And at 19 years old, roughly 19 years old, that was the start of my career. And I was, I was the undefeated world champion at one time. So I ran through a lot of fighters for many years. It's a slow start in boxing. You start at a 4-round level, then you go to the 6-round level, to the 8-round level, to the 10-round level, to finally 12-round championship boxing, which I was able to from the age of 19 to about the age of 25 when I made it to that level. So it was a 6-year journey, and it was well worth it. I've been living a dream my whole life. I'm so grateful to the sport and to everything that I've accomplished. But I was able to win one world title. I was able to unify the world title. And then in 2019, I finally lost the world title. Just to, one of the legendary fighters known as Manny Pacquiao, who happened to be about a 14-time world champion throughout his career and will be coming back next month at the age of 46. So salute to Manny Pacquiao, making me not feel old here at 36. So it was a great fight. When I tell people who watched the fight, it was a very close fight. I lost on split decision. For those who don't know what that means, there are 3 judges, and 2 said he won, 1 said I won. So one of these guys, out of the 2 that said he won, one of these guys were really the deciding factor. Right. And one judge had him winning by 1 point in a 12-round fight. And I could have been and still the undefeated if I could have made up that 1 point in the fight. It was a very close fight. I fought a legend. He fought like a legend. I'm very grateful to the experience. It's burned into my memory. We're talking about Las Vegas. We're talking about pay-per-view. We're MGM Grand, 25,000 in the arena. I mean, it's everything that 7-year-old boy ever could even think about dreaming of. The only thing that didn't happen that we wanted to happen was my hand being raised. But it's easier to talk about now. But in 2019, I was going through a lot. It's easy to say I'm a very nice guy, but when it comes to the fight world and when it comes to the fight talk, if you watch any of my buildup, there's a lot of ego in the room.
Right.
You know?
And that's necessary, right? For athletes. It's important.
It's definitely basic, standard little thing that happens in the industry, I mean, Michael Jordan's ego made him great, Kobe, he was very competitive. LeBron is very competitive, right? So not only do we have egos, but we're very competitive, and getting to that status when you're so used to hearing undefeated champion, undefeated champion, undefeated champion, and then you finally get that blemish. I was injured in 2019. My doctor wanted me to have hand surgery before the fight, but I loved the fight so much, and I was actually scared of the hand surgery because even though they call it minor, it felt very major to me, right? This is how I do my business.
Right.
And if you cut me open and you do, and it doesn't work again, there's a fear. There was a lot of fear and insecurity going into my mind in 2019. But with all that, I still accepted the challenge. I still put up a tremendous fight, and I just happened to lose a close one. But even though it's easy to talk about now, the way it hit my heart, the way it hit my soul, and the way that it scorned my ego, it actually took years. And I know that there are many fighters who have experienced these losses that just as a side thing, you end up spiraling down into depression, right? Big paydays. You lost the fight, you won the money. That's what everyone tries to remind you, right? You lost the fight, but you won the money. You're in a good position. You're still, you can bounce back. But there was something very unique about the way that I spiraled into the depression, and all of a sudden you're not making good choices. And, luckily for me, I have an amazing woman by my side, my wife, who in 2019, we didn't have the children, and it was just me and her. And I wasn't in a good mood throughout the year after the loss. So a lot of frustration got put on her, which eventually, I had to acknowledge and, apologize for. But I'm very grateful that she stayed by my side and was always there for me. And she was one of the first people to try to wake me up, actually. And I didn't like her words because she doesn't understand boxing. But after I wasn't offended by her words and I sat and listened, I actually was able to calm down. And what she said to me was, "It's just a game." And I was like, "Woman, this is life." You know what I'm saying? This is from the age of 7. This is my life. This is my blood. I had to tell her I was married to the game before I ever married you, but I'll be out of the game and I'll still be married to you. So that's how I finished that one off, But yeah, it was very challenging. And ironically enough, COVID hit in 2020.
Right.
So I lost in 2019. Then COVID hit in 2020, which sent all sports in an uproar. We didn't know what we were going to do. Slowly, the entertainment industry started to bring sports back, but without fans. And I got a phone call to take a fight in the LA Fox studios with nobody watching, just people watching on TV. And after fighting Manny Pacquiao with 25,000 people in attendance, I literally answered the call and I said, "This is the most boring proposal you have ever given me. No, thank you." And when I hung up the phone, I didn't know the repercussions of COVID and how long it was going to be until, life went back to normal. So I think right before we met in July of 2022, that February, I finally had a comeback fight from all that time off from COVID. I was able to win, which felt good, but somehow I ended up feeling still a little depressed. I learned later what that depression was all about from a Joe Rogan podcast of all places. And they were talking about inner city gun violence and how there's a dopamine that's released from these high stressful environments. And that if they're taking out that, because they're not used to this drama and this excitement that they were getting, they can find themselves depressed. Then the conversation went to relating that to fighters in the UFC in Vegas. And once I heard the correlation of the fighters in UFC, of course, it hit me home with boxing. So what happens is on fight week, we have a big buildup to sell the fight in Vegas. Lots of interaction, different outlets, interviews, people, autographs, Vegas, people having fun. Then the fight night, everyone at the fight, the crowd, boom, 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 all the action Saturday night. But once the fight's over Sunday morning, everyone hits the airport and they're back home. And then there's just like this low. And I learned, regardless of if you win, if you lose, or if you get a draw, what throws you into depression is a dopamine response. And it's a dopamine crash. From the high, you're subjugated to a low. And to be honest, it was me coming across this knowledge and wanting to do something, anything that I could do to kind of try to combat this. The only thing that I have in my arsenal is oxygen therapy, hyperbaric chambers, oxygenating the brain, cold baths, some biohacking things, just to keep oneself grounded and to keep one's mental health stable. But, a few months later, I found myself at the North Carolina Boone Ashram with you and, getting initiated into the breathwork and, learning about the art of living and giving myself some techniques that I can use on the daily to stay, mentally stable, which luckily for me was very important because ever since 2022, somehow my career still wasn't going my way after a victory. I got no phone call for a follow-up fight. Finally, I was scheduled to fight last year in Vegas. 2 weeks before the fight, I popped my bicep tendon. I'm out another year, and it was finally this year that I had a 3-year comeback fight.
And you won great.
And I'm very grateful throughout those 3 years that I have these modalities of oxygen, ice baths, but of course the breath work and the meditation, because 2024 was a really rough year. And I think working with the art of living kept me in a good place that allowed me to bounce back and come strong with my comeback fight that we just did in Australia, April 12th this year.
When you came to the art of living, you also had the opportunity to do a sit down with Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. How was that? Like, how was talking to him? How was being coached in a way by him in this world of breathwork and mental health and meditation, right? You have had amazing coaches. How was it being coached by him?
Yeah, I'm very grateful because I've always worked with just fabulous coaches throughout my career. And then when it was time to dive into this world of meditation, to backtrack a little bit, I was a meditator as early as like 18, 19 years old. But I was just doing basic meditations, little YouTube videos on my own time. I used to study Buddhism and Hinduism, and I was always intrigued with the topics. For those who know anything about Steve Jobs and the Apple, some people might have heard the story about how one of his favorite books was Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda. So, of course, in my early 20s, I stumbled upon that book. I stumbled upon Be Here Now, fabulous book, especially for the youth, beautiful artwork all throughout the booklet from Ram Dass. And I was not really foreign to the concept of meditation, and I wasn't even foreign to the concept of Kriya, but I've never been introduced to Kriya. But what I was really intrigued by was signing up for the silence course. I always heard about people doing 10-day Vipassanas and being quiet and, the the Buddha barely spoke sometimes and this and that. And it always sounded intriguing, but it always sounded like a little too much. So when I heard about the Art of Living's 3-day program, I said, okay, maybe we can do this. Maybe this is something that we can give a shot at. And it just was phenomenal. You know, not only is Boone, North Carolina a beautiful place, and the ashram just aesthetically so peaceful with this location at the top of the hill there and the scenery, but it's really amazing what you can do in 3, 4, 5 days if you give yourself the time and the space and you dedicate it to yourself. So like you said, getting back to the interview with Guru Dev, I've only known gurus from booklets, you know, never met a proclaimed guru, you know, maybe a fitness guru. I probably met several of those guys, but never a true spiritual guru.
Yeah.
You know, I was intrigued that day. I think you walked me to the kutir. We got in the building and I was sitting in a chair like this. He was over on a different side of the room. Certain devotees were coming up to him, maybe seeking blessings, giving a small offering. He gave like some mangoes or bananas and, you know, some snacks or whatever. There was some little exchanges happening. I think they were speaking in Hindi too, so it was easy for me to not catch any of it. You know, I don't know what was going on, you know. But I was like, they said, Guru Dev will be with you shortly. Just wait here. So I waited, and I'm very used to questions being asked to me. I'm not used to being the one asking the question, but it was a very fun interaction. And I don't know why, but you can see it. Anybody who goes online, you might put the link in the bio, but anybody who goes online and watches the conversation between Keith Thurman and Guru Dev, there was just a smile on my face. There was a little bit of nerves, but there was this little inner joy at the same time. Like, I can't believe after all these years, after all this research, like, here I am going to meet a real guru. And I really don't know what this means to me at all, you know, but he sat down and I just opened up with some very soft, simple questions. And we had a beautiful conversation. Ironically enough, something I'm more accustomed to Guru Dev saying now, he was speaking to me way more with his vibration than he was with his words. His words and the dialogue that we had was a beautiful dialogue, and anybody can enjoy the conversation that we had. But I cannot share with you my experience of the unconditional love and the serenity that was emanating from this quote unquote person. And, you know, I'm a very down to earth guy. I have no problem making eye contact. So meeting a guru for the first time, I said, I'm just going to, you know, be very personable. I'm going to speak to him and I'm going to make eye contact as much as I can. And I just remember eventually when all this energy was filling up the room and my mind was being subdued, my brainwaves were coming very neutralized, a small voice came to my head and says, yo, you need to break eye contact with this guy. You know, this person might not be a normal person. And I did a double blink. I did a look down at the ground, take a deep breath. And I was like, all right, let's go back to this interview. I had to break contact. It's very profound, but I was raised a Southern Baptist. You know, I was raised with the Bible and, you know, which means that you're raised with a lot of stories about miracles. You're raised with the love and the passion for the Christ, you know. Whatever the Christ means to whoever's listening, but the Christ is something that we put on a pedestal, you know? It's that Christ consciousness, it's that anointed one. And I just remember certain things in the Bible. It says, seek and ye shall find. And it also says that there's nothing new under the sun. And I just remember, you know, Jesus said, all the things that I've done, you can do, and even greater. And there was just something about meeting Guru Dev. There was something about that presence that it took everything out of a book. It took everything that could have been a fairy tale, and it showed the true magic of life. That there is something here that a lot of us call divine, to just summarize it. We call it the divine. But there is something here that's omnipresent, that loves you and has always been a part of your life, regardless of if you acknowledge it or not. And as much as I love Jesus, as much as I love Buddha, I think when you meet a living master, they show you the magic of life here and now, and not what was once upon a time. When there's nothing wrong with the life that Jesus lived, and there's nothing wrong with the life that Buddha lived. And I'm still inspired to this day from both of their life stories. And I still open up my Bible from time to time. But there's something about being a fighter and having a coach tell you what to do. And with the Art of Living in Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, I have techniques and methods that I can implement in my daily life. And I'm just truly grateful for it. I've been participating with the foundation for 3 years. I'm currently a volunteer with the Art of Living as I took my VTP last year. In preparation, I'm not rushing into these things, but there may be a day where I become a teacher after doing the Seed Teacher Training Program, so that I can initiate people like you brought me unto the path. I can initiate people regardless of what people think about gurus of the past, gurus that they've read about, cults, and different things of that nature. What I love about the Art of Living is that those 3 words themselves are just beautiful. Art of living. It comes off 100% non-denominational. And in this busy world, the techniques that are given through the foundation of the Art of Living is just for everyday people. So if anybody is listening, and if you're a science person, you say, oh, a guru's not for me. You don't have to worry about the guru, you know? You don't have to worry about what one devotee says about, oh, they felt unconditional love, or Guru Dev was reading my mind or my thoughts, or any of these esoteric mystical experiences. The fact is that there are ancient yogic practices that are beneficial for everyday people, you know, thousands and thousands of years later. So I just think everybody can benefit. And for those reasons, you know, I continue to work with the Art of Living, and I'm looking forward to going deeper, as I've been doing every single year, taking a few more of the advanced courses. I'm actually itching for a silence retreat. I might do it by next weekend. I was thinking about hopping in on a silence retreat because I like to do one every 6 months. I did one in January, so I'm due one now, this time this year. So we'll see. But there's nothing like a coach, and not just any coach, but one of the best. And when you look at the accolades of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, another thing that really pulled me in is just all the humanitarian work that he has done. It just reminds me of a Mahatma Gandhi. It reminds me of a Martin Luther King. It reminds me of a Mother Teresa. And because I have the pleasure of meeting him on multiple different scenarios and doing the interview, he is so with you, whether it's an old lady in India, or a prime minister, or an athlete, or just some online influencer. He's always with the person in front of him 100%. And he just doesn't have any like favoritism, you know? You can't fly him in a jet and impress the man. He really cares about human values and how we treat one another. And he talks a lot about mental illness, which has a very strong spot in my heart, not just with the little bit of depression that I've experienced from the high highs and the low lows of boxing, but at a young age of 14, 15 years old, I remember my mother was bedridden with depression. And a 14-year-old boy doesn't know what a medical diagnosis like depression is. So I didn't know what was really going on with my mother at the time. And as I continued to mature, I could have more sympathy for what my mother went through in that day and age. And just to know the youth of today, the mental illness is skyrocketing and the suicide rates are skyrocketing. And, you know, just to have somebody not only speak up about this in the world, but create programs to try to change and impact all throughout America and all throughout many different nations. I believe the Art of Living is in 82 countries. So we all need to have those exemplars, of who we look up to, whether it's some billionaire tycoon or this guy or that guy. We look up to many different people for many different reasons, but a lot of times it's because of the hard work and what they're able to do. We admire that, we acknowledge it, and I just love having that shining light that one man can make a change.
And that should be the lesson that we take from this, right? And Gurudev has, impacted millions of lives around the world, and so can we, right? And that's the inspiration that we want to drive from this. Any last advice, Keith Thurman, that you would like to give to our listeners, and especially to the younger generation? Maybe a 30-second punchy advice that they can implement in their lives right now.
First things first, always see the light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how dark it is. Let's say you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel because that's how deep in the tunnel you are. But you must hold the faith that as you continue to move forward in life, that light will appear. You haven't seen it. You might not have a reason to really believe in it, but I'm going to tell you right now, never lose that faith. That faith has carried me through so many obstacles in life because I tell myself that things will get better. Things can get better. Always remember the law of impermanence. When it rains, it doesn't rain forever. I live in Florida, baby. The storms are coming. The storms are coming. But I'm not worried about the storms because storms, they come and they go. Summer, winter, autumn, spring, these are seasons. And just knowing this knowledge and wisdom that just like the seasons of the year, your problems are not permanent problems, that they are seasonal, that they're subject to change. And if there's anything that you can do in your power to make a change, stop hesitating and do it. And like you mentioned earlier, if you're not around people who lift you up, who inspire you, who encourage you, and who love you and want the best for you, then you're going to need to change your friend. And that might be one of the best things that you can do in life. And it hurts. I'd lie to you if I told you it's an easy thing. Drop your friends, drop your homies, drop the crew. I know what it's like. I've dropped many friends, many men. It hurts me to this day because I still love them, but they're not in my life. Move forward, always think positive, and just continue to have that faith in self, in God, or at least in a few good people around you.
Beautiful. With that note, I would like to say thank you, Keith. And not many people know this, but I consider you as my brother. I love you, man. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everybody for tuning in. This was yet another episode of Beyond the Known. And Keith, it's always a pleasure talking to you. And,
all good, my brother. Love you too.
Thank you.
Blessed.
Hey, a quick pause. I want to share a resource I personally trusted for years. And when it comes to living well, not just in moments of meditation or reflection, but in everyday life, what we put into our bodies matters deeply. And that is why I love Sri Sri Tattva. It's a brand rooted in authentic Ayurveda, from daily wellness supplements to natural personal care, all crafted with ancient wisdom and modern purity. No shortcuts, no hypes, just products that support real well-being from the inside out. For me, it's all about alignment between what I practice and what I teach and how I live. And Sri Sri Tattva helps me bring some of that care into my daily routine. You can explore their offerings at srisritatvausa.com. I highly recommend checking them out. The link is also in my description below. I want to share something I've been personally loving. Shankara's Ghee Sutra is one of those rare products where ancient wisdom meets modern skincare. It's crafted from ghee that's churned 10,000 times. Yes, 10,000. Blended with Ayurvedic botanicals like hibiscus, bamboo, and it penetrates deep. up to 7 layers to nourish, hydrate, and bring your skin back to life. No harsh chemicals, no surface level fixes, just deep, authentic care from the inside out, like everything we talk about on this show. You can check it out at shankara.com, and trust me, your skin will thank you. The link is also in the description below.